Joan was born around 1412 in Domremy, a small village in northeastern France, the daughter of a humble peasant family. From her earliest years, she was known for her piety and her devotion to saints, spending hours in prayer and assisting her mother with household chores when not tending the family's sheep. The 100 Years' War between England and France had raged for decades, and Joan grew up under the shadow of conflict. English armies occupied northern territories, the French crown was weak, and despair settled over many of her countrymen. When she was about 13 years old, Joan began experiencing what she described as visions and voices. She heard the voices of Saint Michael the Archangel, Saint Catherine of Alexandria, and Saint Margaret of Antioch urging her to support Charles VII, the disinherited son of the French king, and to help drive out the English. These messages troubled and yet inspired her. She believed that God had chosen her as his instrument to restore France's rightful king and to free her land. Although she was illiterate, Joan conveyed her divine commission clearly, insisting that she must travel to Vaucouleurs, the nearest garrison loyal to Charles's cause. Convincing her skeptical local authorities was difficult. Many believed she was deluded or even in league with dark forces. But Joan's unwavering confidence, her refusal to offer bribes or political favors, and the reports of her steadfast virtue gradually won them over. In late 1428, a small group escorted her to Vaucouleurs, where she gained an audience with Robert de Baudricourt, the local captain. Even he hesitated, but Joan foretold specific military successes and claimed divine backing. At last, he agreed to supply her with an escort to Chinon, the seat of Charles's court. Joan's arrival at Chinon in early 1429 caused a stir. Clad in simple peasant clothes, she claimed that only the king's eyes could confirm her mission. After passing through weeks of scrutiny, tests of her virginity, theological questioning by the clergy, and Charles's own examinations, she was finally granted a meeting in disguise. When Charles stepped forward and spoke to her, she immediately addressed him as Your Majesty, acknowledging him as the true king. Overcome, he revealed himself, and Joan knelt before him. Convinced by her conviction and the fulfillment of her prophecies, Charles provided Joan with a suit of armor, a banner, and a small force to accompany her. Her first major engagement came at Orléans, besieged by the English. In April 1429, Joan arrived with reinforcements and inspired the troops. She did not lead from the front lines like a typical knight but rode boldly along the walls, encouraging soldiers, lifting morale, and directing assaults on key bastions. Her presence sparked renewed vigor. Within days, the English lifted the siege, marking a turning point in the war. Word of the Maid of Orléans spread quickly. English commanders feared her as a fearsome instrument of divine wrath, while the French saw in her a living symbol of hope. Emboldened by this success, Joan pressed on. She participated in several more engagements, helping to secure towns along the Loire River and clearing the way to Reims, the traditional site for royal coronations. In July 1429, against all expectations, the French army reached Reims. Joan, clad in white armor, stood beside Charles as he was crowned King of France, fulfilling one of her earliest visions. The ceremony, rich with ancient ritual, strengthened Charles's legitimacy and drove a powerful symbolic wedge beneath English claims. Yet her mission was far from complete. Over the next months, Joan fought alongside French forces even after Charles directed her to rest and recover from illness. She endured fever and exhaustion but refused to abandon her banner. Her insistence on continuing the campaign strained relations with some of the nobility who saw her influence as a disruption of traditional command. They began to question her judgment, her visions, and the wisdom of following a mere peasant girl into battle. By the autumn of 1429, Joan's star began to wane. The French suffered setbacks at Paris, its gates proving too formidable to breach. Political rivalries, logistical failures, and doubts about Joan's presence combined to stall further advances. In May 1430, while leading a relief for the garrison at Compiègne, she was trapped when Burgundian forces allied with the English surrounded her. Despite fighting valiantly, she was taken captive by the Burgundians and sold to the English for a sizable ransom. Imprisoned at Rouen, a hub of English power in Normandy, Joan faced a trial orchestrated by English authorities and their French clerical allies. They charged her with heresy, witchcraft, and cross-dressing. She had worn men's clothing to preserve her modesty and protect herself against assault. The proceedings, held in a cold, damp tower room, lasted nearly a year. Joan defended herself with remarkable spirit and theological knowledge, despite her lack of formal education. She insisted her voices were from God, not the devil, and argued that her choice of attire was a matter of necessity and divine command. Her outspoken defiance infuriated her judges. Threatened with torture, she guarded her speech carefully but refused to recant her claims of divine mission. In May 1431, she was found guilty of heresy. Offered a path to clemency if she renounced her visions and submitted to ecclesiastical authority, Joan agreed, only to later resume wearing male attire when guards searched her for hidden weapons. This breach was seized upon as proof of her unrepentant heresy. On May 30, 1431, at the Place du Vieux Marquis in Rouen, Joan of Arc was led to the stake. Bound to a tall wooden pillar, she watched as the wood beneath her feet was set aflame. At first, she remained steadfast, repeating prayers, clutching a small cross, and calling upon Jesus. As the flames rose, some guards, moved by her composure, offered to let her recant to save her life, but she refused to betray her convictions. Her voice grew faint, and she was heard to cry out, "Jesus!" before the flames consumed her. She was 19 years old. Her ashes were cast into the Seine River, the English hoping to prevent any relics from sparking further devotion. Yet the execution only deepened her legend. Stories of miracles at her death site and persistent whispers of her divine favor circulated among the French people. For 2 decades, France continued its struggle until finally, in 1453, the 100 Years' War ended with French victory. In 1455, during the reign of Charles VII, now secure on his throne, Joan's mother petitioned for a trial to clear her daughter's name. Pope Calixtus III authorized a posthumous retrial, which concluded in 1456 that Joan's original trial had been corrupted by political motives and procedural abuses. She was declared innocent, her name fully rehabilitated, and her reputation restored. Over time, Joan's story transcended politics and faith to become a cultural touchstone. She inspired poets, playwrights, artists, and revolutionaries. In 1920, she was canonized as a saint by the Roman Catholic Church. Today, she stands as a symbol of courage, faith, and the power of conviction. Her banner reproduced on flags and statues marking her path from humble shepherdess to martyr and national heroine. The Maid of Orléans remains a testament to the enduring impact one determined individual can have on the course of history.